Hi everybody, I'm Kerry. I'm going to talk today about the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn happening tomorrow, December 21st, 2020. I've honestly been really obsessed with this all year long, thinking about it and what is it going to do and what is it going to mean, and here we are. Could have made this video a little earlier probably, but I've been getting a lot of messages in the last few days. What do you think? What do you think? So here we go. Um, there's a lot of things going along in the media about this, which is really cool. I love when people look up from their lives into the sky and see what's going on. Um, I've read things about this is the closest conjunction of these two planets since 800 years or 400 years, and it's at 0 degrees Aquarius and the age of Aquarius and all of this stuff. I practice Vedic astrology, Jyotish. In Jyotish, we use what we call the sidereal zodiac, which is the astronomically, scientifically observable zodiac. So if you're actually looking at Saturn and Jupiter in the sky after sunset, you're actually looking at the constellation of Capricorn. So this conjunction is happening at about 7 degrees Capricorn. In most Western astrologers use what we call the tropical zodiac. It's not exactly based on observable positions. So in the Western viewpoint, this is happening at 0 degrees Aquarius. This has nothing to do with the age of Aquarius. The ages are based on the precession of the equinoxes. That's a whole other video. So I don't really see it that way. I think we're still in Capricorn, and Capricorn's an earth sign, and we're looking at Saturn being very strongly placed in Capricorn as it's his own sign. Jupiter is a little bit struggling in Capricorn. He doesn't like it so much there, so this is an interesting conjunction. So let me start first with giving you a quick understanding of what is, in astrological terms, what is Saturn, what is Jupiter. These are the two farthest out planets that we can easily see with our eyes. And they move rather slowly through the zodiac. From our perspective on Earth, we're seeing the sun in all 12 signs every year. That means basically we as Earth are moving around the sun once in a year. It takes Jupiter 12 years to get around the whole zodiac, to make his trip around the sun. It takes Saturn 27 to 29 years to go around the sun. So essentially what we see is, if we're looking at these two planets from our perspective on Earth, we're seeing that Jupiter is running around faster than Saturn, and so he's lapping him on the track. So every so often we expect Jupiter to pass by Saturn, and that's what's happening right now. This happens every 20 years. Every 20 years, the Jupiter catches up to Saturn. And it's been interesting this year as I've looked back to the times that this conjunction has happened. Some of the media stuff makes it sound like this only happens every 800 years, so that's not really true. It's every 20. This particular time, though, the longitude and declination are very close, so it's going to be striking visually, which is great. But it does happen every 20 years that Jupiter catches up and passes by Saturn. Every 10 years, they get to an opposite position, and then Jupiter starts heading back towards Saturn. And so that happens. And it happens in different signs, which is interesting. What's been interesting is looking at the signs these past conjunctions have happened in. So we'll go over that in a little bit. But first, let's just look at what is Jupiter, what is Saturn, astrological terms. And Jupiter, we call him Guru in Sanskrit. He is the great teacher of all things, really. So Jupiter, in astrological terms, shows how we grow, how we expand, where's our fortune. So many things are under the umbrella of Jupiter. We could say children are about Jupiter, and education is about Jupiter, and even parts of medicine are about Jupiter. But essentially, it's a very positive effect in our birth charts or in our daily life. Jupiter brings hope and joy and warmth and sort of a golden glow about life. Everybody wants Jupiter to be positive. Jupiter rules the signs of Sagittarius and Pisces in the sky. This conjunction is happening at about 6 degrees, 7 degrees Capricorn. This happens to be a place where it's challenging for Jupiter to do his best because it's Saturn's place. Saturn tends to rule the opposite principles that Jupiter does. Saturn shows our limitations. It shows where we're contractive. He signifies old age, disease, and death. He's really the facts of life guy. He really wants us to remember that our time here is limited. We're all going to pass away someday, just like everybody else. That's what Saturn wants us to remember, that, you know, there's all kinds of people and really none of them have more right to anything than anybody else. So Saturn is considered the lord of time and karma. And he really doesn't forget things. He doesn't let people off the hook. So you can generally think expansive for Jupiter, contractive for Saturn. Yes for Jupiter, no for Saturn. So just in really basic terms. So when we're having a conjunction like this, it really feels like, wow, this is the beginning of some new cycle. Maybe the cycle that has to do with expanding and contracting. And maybe the sign where it's happening is informative to ourselves as individuals, because that sign means something in our personal charts. And so wherever Capricorn is in your chart, maybe feeling very agitated or enlivened right now. Actually, it might feel like completely stopped right now because of this conjunction. I feel we've been building up to this conjunction, and Jupiter's going to run on and go forward. And that should help things in general move forward. Saturn rules Capricorn. It's his place. He is a little bit more strong than Saturn there. The other thing is, as Jupiter has been coming up to Saturn in proximity, there's a concept in astrology called Planetary War. The idea is that when planets occupy the same degree, there's a little bit of a tussle. Just kind of like if somebody was sitting in this chair with me, we would be pushing each other to have the seat. So essentially this week leading up to the Great Conjunction has seen, you know, the war is on, and Jupiter is losing. He's once the conjunction happens tomorrow on the 21st, Jupiter will move ahead, and then Jupiter will be winning for a little bit. Until he gets even further apart, because it's really only a war when we're really together. So that could be explaining why many people I've talked to at this time are feeling kind of stuck, stagnant, waiting. So that could ease up next week when the conjunctions easing up and breaking up. Anyway, so I wanted to share with you the kind of progression of these conjunctions in the last 120 years. That's our recent history. So a lot of us know historical events enough to kind of see patterns and whatnot. You know, as I've been thinking about this all year long, I was trying to see big patterns. Because these kind of planets that take so long to go around the sun, they really are effective in the political, cultural, economic sphere. Yes, of course, they do affect individuals. But I'm here talking about, you know, the big picture. So as it turns out, really cool, this every 20 years when Jupiter catches up to Saturn, um, it's happening in different signs, but there's an interesting rhythm to it. And you could say that. Um, well, I've been thinking, what happens in the 10 years in the decade while Jupiter's walking away from Saturn versus the decade when Jupiter's walking back towards Saturn. So these are thoughts I've had, and I thought, well, when Jupiter walks away, maybe things are more expansive, and when he walks back, maybe they're more contractive. I found that didn't really pan out when I really looked at historical events. And then I realized, well, there's this other series of aspects that at a certain point, when Jupiter walks away, Saturn's going to give him an aspect which sort of creates some pressure and maybe slows him down, slows some growth. And then Jupiter's going to aspect Saturn, and then they're going to be opposite, and etc. So we can't really say just there's a decade of expansion and a decade of contraction. Maybe generally, but there's more modifying. So what I really got excited about was that I figured out that these conjunctions, they're happening every 20 years, and it's roughly on the beginning of a decade. Not exactly every time, but close. And the oppositions are happening every 10 years, on a decade. So that was really interesting because I thought, well, maybe that is why we as cultures, especially in modern recent history, define ourselves by the decades, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. So that's something historians and people can think about. So here's the pattern, the conjunctions. Let's say the first one I looked at was in 1901. Now, if you go looking in Wikipedia, there's a page called the Great Conjunction, and there's some astronomical data on there about the conjunctions and oppositions. I did my own looking, and it didn't really match up with Wikipedia because what I was looking for was the last time they were together. Because there's retrogrades and things that happen where they'll be together, apart, together for a short while, and then move on. So I was looking at what was the last moment they conjoined. So that's what I based my dates on. So we're looking at like in 1901, they conjoined in Sagittarius. And I'm going to go every 20 years here. So then the next conjunction was 1921, September. They conjoined in Virgo, which is an earth sign. 1941, February, Aries, and a fire sign. 1961, Capricorn, just like now. This is interesting. So keep that in mind. This 1961 is in the same sign, and even for those of you who know what I'm talking about, the same nakshatra, which is Uttarashada. Okay, so 1980, December of 1980, we had another conjunction. It was Virgo. And then in May of 2000, which was the last one, happened in the sign of Aries. And now we're having Capricorn again. So if you actually plot those out, you'll see there's a pattern. So that's interesting. And then the oppositions happen in between those 10 years. So 1911, 1931, 1952, 1970, 1991, 2010. So those were the opposition times. So, you could kind of think about it and apply it to your own chart, or whatever you want to do. But I found it really interesting that it's 60 years since they conjoined in the same exact sign. So, go on a hunt and a chase and look up the Great Conjunction on Wikipedia. There's really some neat images there. Astronomers and astrologers have been onto this for thousands of years. So it's not really a new concept, but it is exciting anyway. So 1961, February 18th, 1961 was the last time they joined together in Capricorn. And that was a really, kind of a fertile time in U.S. history, I would say, at least, even in world history. And we could think, well, maybe the 60s, which we think of as the 60s, maybe that's what we're looking at coming up here. Maybe there will be a similar energy. Now, of course, there's all kinds of other modifiers that would affect things. Most strongly, I think, would be the nodal axis and where that is, because that's another sort of slow-moving astrological position that could modify what Saturn and Jupiter are doing, modify, amplify, those kind of things. So anyway, here we are at this great conjunction, and I feel like pretty excited on a personal level, because I think this is a new time for me and a lot of people that I've known. And I wanted to say that when I was looking through history, I got the feeling, from just reading and reading and reading, that these years the 1 year leading up to a great conjunction tends to be pretty intense. A lot of stuff kind of comes up, and surely nobody's going to argue with me that 2020 has been quite like that. So, my hope is that as we move through the end of December and Jupiter starts getting space away from Saturn, that we're all going to feel like things are moving again. One of the things that beyond the conjunction, that I just wanted to add on for Jupiter, because Jupiter gives us hope, and we all look to this kind of inspiration and wisdom that Jupiter brings for people. And Jupiter is currently in Capricorn. It's not the greatest place for Jupiter. It's hard. It's a struggle. It's hard to be positive when you're in a difficult place. And Jupiter takes 12 years to get around the sun. So that means, from our perspective, he is spending about a year in each zodiac sign. So the neat part about this particular sign, Capricorn, this time, is that Jupiter's really not spending his whole year there, and it was split up into 3 sections as well. So it's almost like that's a little bit less of a hit for us, which maybe we really needed at this point. So only 10 months. And so after this conjunction, Jupiter is on the run. He is cruising through Capricorn. From November 19th, which is when Jupiter got into Capricorn, he's going to be moving all the way through 30 degrees of a sign in 5 months. So that's fast. That's some fast motion. And what that could feel like, I think, for people on an individual basis, is that something's happening really fast. Like you put too much yeast in the bread and it's rising all over the place. So, and I think everybody's eager to move on from this really difficult year. So the feeling of, let's move, let's go, that might be really strong for a lot of people after this conjunction. So, figure out what you're going to do with that rapid growth energy. You might want to look at your own chart and see where is Capricorn and what is it doing, and what other planets are Jupiter and Saturn running over in your chart, because you might feel that it's been a long time where you're sort of stuck and waiting, and pretty soon you might feel like, wow, it's time to go. So anyway, that's my take on the Great Conjunction. I'm pretty excited about it. I hope it's clear tomorrow night so we can all see it. I know photographers are out there getting ready to get pictures for us. And I appreciate you guys tuning in and seeing what I have to say. My website is there below, planetaryinfluence.com. I do a monthly written forecast of what we can expect from the planets. And feel free to tune in anytime. I wish everybody a happy holidays. Stay safe. It's been a tough year. We'll get through it.